Hello, welcome back. Programming for Artists. We're building awesome stuff. We're starting to use C++, and this time I'm going to talk about vectors. So, we've looked at vectors before, and we've talked about how we can use vectors to contain all these other kinds of variables in a list, in a stack. And what's great about vectors is they're flexible in that they can get bigger and smaller. We can count through the elements that are in them of whether the vector is full of integers or strings or floating points or booleans or even more complicated objects. And it's a way of containing lots and lots of stuff simply and manipulating them without needing to remember every single piece. We just know that it's stored somewhere over there in an order that we've defined. So I'm going to come to the program that we were looking at previously. I'm working in Visual Studio Code, and we're writing a simple program. We've included the input-output stream. This time what I need to do is I need to say I want to include vector. So it includes the library that understands how to deal with vectors, and then I'm going to make a vector here of type string. So it's going to be a big list or stack that has strings in it one after another, and I'm going to call it names. And in here I'm just going to put a couple of names and show how we can put the names in and pull the names out super flexibly. This is going to be very, very helpful in one of the next videos where I look at loops, how we can automate this process so we can add as many as we like without writing enormous amounts of code, and we can start using automatic code and making small mechanisms inside our code that help us do complicated things with very small amounts of instructions. So I've made a vector of strings called names, and it's empty. Enter the name of people attending the barbecue, and I'm going to just manually put in a couple of names here. So we've said enter the number of people, enter the location, and I'm just going to manually put in two names as an example. So I'm going to say I'm going to make a new string called name 1, and I'm going to say name 1 equals the ubiquitous Jeff. I'm not sure that I know anybody called, actually I do know a couple of people called Jeff, but they spell it with a G. Name, and of course there's Big Jeff, so shout out to Big Jeff. He's out there somewhere being awesome, and if you don't know Big Jeff, you should know Big Jeff. And then name 2 is going to be my friend Mahir, who has just finished writing his first book, so congratulations to Mahir. So name 1, name 2. So we have two variables. I'm going to make two variables. And what's cool is, because I'm making strings, I can say make one variable called name 1, make another variable called name 2, and then I can take names as a vector, and I say dot, and this is the thing that a vector can do, and I want to take the name and push it onto the back of it, exactly how I said in one of the pieces of paper that I have down here. So I'm going to take the vector, I'm going to say push onto the back, and it wants to have a string pushed because it knows the names list only has strings in. So I'm going to put name 1, and that becomes actually element 0 because stuff with computers starts counting at 0. And then I'm going to do this again. Names push back. So it's taking my next variable, my next string, and pushing it onto the back of this list of names. Name 2. So I've made a vector of the kind strings. Make this a little bigger. And I've made 2 strings, put values into them, and then pushed them, name 1 and name 2, onto the back. Now I could actually reuse this. And there's a simple way to do it, which is a bit weird. I'm just going to make a variable called name. And I'm going to say, put Jeff into the name. Push the name into the list of names. And then I'm going to say, put Mejia into this string variable, and then push that back on, so we get different instances of these variables. So we have Jeff and Mejia at position 0 and position 1 in the vector. So the first one and then the second position, again, they start at 0. And to see what's going on, what I could do is I could say, use console out again. The first name is, and in the vector names, I use a square brackets, I want to look at position 0. So it'll go and have a look at what's at position 0 and pull that out and print it out. And then I can do, pipe this to the console out. Is names position 1. Get rid of those because you don't need them for the moment. And I'm just going to put end line at the end, and the same here, so that each bit that's going out to the console will start a new line at the end. So I've made a vector of strings called names. I've made a string called name. I put Jeff into that string and push it onto the back of my list of vectors, or into my vector. And then I put Mejia into that string name. So I change the name that's in there, and then I push it back onto names again. And to address names as a list, in the square brackets, I say what position, the first one, the second one, and so on and so on, so on, remembering that it starts at 0. So I'm going to save this and come to my terminal. And again, I'm going to say compile variables.cpp -o to output it to variables and tell it to run. Cool. The first name is Jeff, the second name is Mejia. Now, this is a little bit manual because I'm having to go and ask it, but I could make a loop that just runs through pushing names in and pulling them out. And what's really cool is I don't have to have huge lists or name 1, name 2, name 3. I just have a list called, or a vector called names. That's very, very useful. And that's the beginning of how we can start to use vectors to organize all of our stuff. So if this makes any sense, keep watching. I'm going to be carrying on looking at loops and conditional statements and then start to build more complicated things. Subscribe, hit the like button, leave some comments below, and I will see you on the next video in Programming for Artists.